Hi everybody, Mike, Newfound Past. I want to do a little video today talking about my reseller resume, my Bonafides, my reseller Bonafides, because I've had a lot of new subscribers in the past few months. A lot of you maybe haven't watched my early videos where I talked about myself a lot. People get to know you. Now I feel like when people get to know you, they trust you, they want to watch your videos, and why wouldn't you? I could be some just schmuck off the street and don't know what I'm talking about, but we're going to talk about my reseller resume and, the process I went through to get where I am today, who I am, where I came from, the experiences I've had, education, all that good stuff. So I had a little crib sheet, little crib notes here, just in case I forget anything. So just like most people, I think getting into this is a lot of how you were raised, how you grew up, your family. And for me, I always remember going to garage sales with my grandmother on my father's side. Yeah, she's passed away now. All my grandparents passed away, and my parents. But and going to auctions with my parents and garage sales with my parents and stuff. And I remember as a kid being, bored out of my head with that stuff because I couldn't buy anything. We were poor. We were there for a reason, trying to get stuff cheap. But something about that definitely clicked in my adult mind, reference back to that. So that's when it probably started, but you just never can tell what sticks with the kid and what doesn't. And I think going to those with my grandmother and my parents definitely led to where I am. So what did that lead into? Like when I was going through high school and all that stuff, I wasn't a great student. It was just not an emphasis in our family. It's not that I couldn't have been, it's that it just wasn't expected. And that's not my parents' fault. That's not anybody's fault. It's not my fault even, because my whole family is blue collar workers. My dad was earliest memory a job of him having was a truck driver, over the road truck driver, and after that he was in pipe fitting until he had an accident and was disabled. Uh, as most of you know, my mother was permanently disabled since 1980. She was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1980, and she was at that time she was a department manager at Walmart, and we were actually pretty well off. We lived in a nice home, subdivision, big 2-story house, the whole deal. But from that point forward, when my mother was diagnosed with MS, from that point forward, we were poor as dirt. She lost her job, her disability, Social Security disability is nothing, it's peanuts. It was like at that time in 1980, it was like $350 a month, and everybody's like, yeah, it's based on what you pay it in. She was young. My mom was 30 when she was diagnosed with MS, and the lights went out. One day she was at work at Walmart, department manager at Walmart, and the lights went out. So that changed everything. And like I said, my dad was a pipe fitter, never made much money, and he was an alcoholic. And all my other relatives as well. My grandfather was plumber, pipe fitter, all that kind of blue collar work. All my uncles have a master electrician, HVAC guy, 2 or 3 master plumbers, and you can make good money in that line of work, real good money. They didn't, not in Arkansas. Some of my uncles did okay, but back in those days, the 70s, 80s, they didn't make anything. But it showed what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to destroy my body like you should see my uncles now, and I feel bad for them. They're some of the best people in the world. Their bodies are broke, their backs are shot, their knees are shot, their hips are shot, their feet are shot, and I love these guys, but they're just broken down and beaten. So I think I made the right choice. I always knew, working summers, helping out with my dad, and there was one summer I worked for an asphalt company. My dad knew the guys that ran it. Hard work, hot, running a 90-pound jackhammer. I was strong, but it showed me what I did not want to do. So yeah, that's tough work, and I admire anyone that does it. And it can pay, but man, it takes a toll on you. So with that in mind, when I got to be a senior in high school, I started making really good grades. And when I was a senior, I was merit roll, A's and B's. Didn't really even put that much effort in, just a modicum of effort, and I made A's and B's. And took the ACT, which is what you take down in Arkansas. You don't take the SAT, you take the ACT. And I did pretty well on it. And I'll never forget this ever. My high school counselor, her name's Debbie Finley. She graduated high school with my mother, actually. My mom didn't like school. She called me in her office and she sat me down and she said, Michael, what have you been doing? Because I made such a good score in the ACT. And she was like, you should be going to college. And I was like, yeah, I know. You know, and kind of took that for granted because I made a good score on the ACT, but not good enough for scholarship level. If I'd put just a little bit more work in, you know, went to maybe a math prep class for that, I probably would have gotten a scholarship. That's how good of a score it was. But young, dumb. So now I was already in delayed entry program to go to the Marine Corps Reserves. So yeah, I was like, I'm going to have college paid for that way. So that's what I did. Went to the Marine Corps, and most of you know that story. It's been 25 years. Just a couple weeks ago that I left for boot camp. And so yeah, and after got out of boot camp, was in the reserves, and I just I didn't go immediately. I did go immediately to college, but it didn't click instantly. So I just kind of futzed around, worked jobs, just, you know, your typical servers and restaurant management and catering and that kind of stuff, food service stuff, and eventually landed a real job. It's like I was a drug tester, drug tested people, went to schools, you know, truck drivers, that kind of stuff. But eventually I was like, you know, I really need to, you know, get my act together. So finally went to college, and I did. I went to college, moved to Oklahoma, Chickasha, Oklahoma, and went to University of Science and Arts of Oklahoma. It's a good school, actually, small school. And I really liked it there. It really worked out well for there, and I went hardcore. I got in and 18 hours a semester and just went hardcore, which I don't really recommend. I should have enjoyed myself a little bit more, but I was a little bit older at that time, and I was like, I need to get this done. I need to get the show on the road. So I graduated in 2.5 years with my bachelor's degree from USAO in physical education. Thought I was going to be a teacher, coach, all that good stuff, and boy was I wrong, as most people are. But throughout college, I've made a lot of friends. I visited a friend in California that, you know, I went to college with. I still have friends all over the country that I went to college with. But in my last semester of college, a lady I was friends with, Beth, she was older like me, even a couple years older than I was. She had been in the professional world and stopped that and came back to school. Well, about a year into her school, her old company called her back and said, we'll give you a big raise and this title, and we want you to come back. So she did. It was that good, you know. But I was in my last semester of college, and she was in a position where she was going to be hiring a bunch of people, and she was like, yo, Mike, you want to come work for me down here in Florida? And I was like, I don't have anything else to do, so why not? So I went down there and worked for her company, and it was just the deal about that job was it was just it wasn't a contract position, but it was you would go to one spot until the job was done. It was a signed company. Like I was in Fort Myers, and we had a job at the airport, and that job took 8 months. Once that was done, okay, well, now you have to move to Texas. Not ideal, you know. But luckily, within that first contract, I met who is now my wife, and we started dating. She lived back in Missouri. So we hit it off and everything, and at the end of this Fort Myers job, I went to the lady that gave me the job. I'm like, you know, I appreciate this greatly, but I think I'm going to move on. And I told her why, and she was like, it's fantastic, you know, good luck to you. Still friends with her on Facebook today. And so I did. I got done with that job, moved to Missouri, and that's where things really changed for this reseller world. So I know it's a long story, but this is my story. So, you know, going to college, I take education personally, and I don't regret it, even though I didn't use that degree specifically. But without that degree, I wouldn't have got that job, which wouldn't have led me to Missouri. You know, it's all dominoes, you know, and education is important to me just because I've seen how difficult it is without it. And not to say that everyone needs it. There is some super successful resellers, more successful than I am, that never step foot on the college campus, and they're smart people. And it's not for everyone, but I really enjoyed it. So, yeah. But went to Missouri and actually struggled finding work there. Fully admit it. I was like, I have a degree and some experience with this company, and I'll find something. Couldn't find anything. I mean, it was a struggle. So I actually started doing landscaping work just to make ends meet. I had a car payment, and rent and all this stuff and bills, just like everyone, small student loan payment. And I was like, I got to work. So I was trying to find ways to make money. Well, guess what? Doing landscaping work, and then my girlfriend and I, who's now my wife, then she was just my girlfriend. She was like, "Oh, we should go to this auction." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I love auctions. Let's go to the auction." Auction was awesome. Like, it was one of those dream auctions where everything goes super cheap. They had good stuff, and we didn't even have that much money then. We had not much money at all, but we literally spent like $20 and had a truckload of stuff, truckload of good stuff. So that was the real beginning, like, of this journey that led me to where I am today. That letting that stuff, we're like, okay, we have all this stuff. How are we going to sell it? This is pre Facebook. This is pre everything. I mean, eBay was around, and I had sold stuff on eBay in the past, like back in the late 90s, but just a little bit of stuff here and there, nothing major. Yahoo auctions, you remember that? I had dabbled my fingers in that back when it was first rolling out, but nothing serious. But I was like, some of this stuff I know I can sell on eBay, and I did. I listed some of it on eBay, and we listed some, salt and pepper shakers and some other stuff. But I was like, this big stuff, what are we gonna do with it? So she was like, oh, I know this antique mall, and it was called the Ice Chalet. It's closed down now. It was in Columbia, Missouri. And she's like, we ought to go check that out and see how much a booth is. Maybe we can sell stuff there. I'm like, yeah, let's go check it out. We had no money. Remember this, we had zero money. So we go there and look around at their booths and stuff. And I think an 8x10 booth there was like $140 or $160 a month, which was a lot of money to us back then. But we still were like, oh, we think we can make a run of this. This place is full, it's busy. And we started doing that. Then we was doing okay. It was nothing spectacular, but you're bringing in anything, it's better than nothing, right? So that led us, that booth at Ishley, we were selling stuff there, and they only allowed, they weren't like strictly antiques, but they definitely weren't flea market stuff. But we had all this other stuff that really wouldn't fit in there to sell. So she was like, oh, there's this other place in town, because she had lived here a while. She was like, this other place in town, it's kind of trashy and stuff. It's called Itchy's Flea Market. And she was like, they rent out booths too. So I go, oh, let's go check it out, And we go in, and she was right. It was a trash pit. The lady that owned this place, it was like filthy, piled up junk everywhere. But we needed to sell stuff. So we actually got an 8x10 booth there as well and started selling stuff, doing okay. Stuff actually sold there. And yeah. So we're selling there for a few months, and we get to know everybody, the workers, the owner. And I was talking to the owner one day. I won't say her last name, but her first name is Carrie. And she was burned out with it. She was done with it. She wanted to sell it. And I was like, oh, really? How much? I didn't have any means to buy this. I didn't have any money. Nothing at all. But I was like, well, how much, what do you want for this? And she shot me a number. And I'm like, well, if you're willing to owner finance, let me look at your books and stuff, and let's see if we can work something out. She was like, yeah, because she owned it outright. I mean, not the building itself, but the business. So we went through all the rigmarole, looked at her book. She was bankrupt. It was going down in flames. But renegotiated the lease with the landlord and got a little bit off there. I was like, the numbers aren't adding up here. And she was paying a couple $1,000 a month for billboards on the interstate. And I'm like, those got to go, after I did a small market study with customers and stuff. And but we worked out a deal where I would pay so much a month for so many years, and yeah, took it over. And didn't make a penny for that first year. Probably didn't make any money at all, but turned it around, cleaned it up, got all the junk cleared out of there. The carpets cleaned, the bathrooms cleaned, hired better staff, got rid of some toxic people, toxic dealers, and it breathed a breath of fresh air in there. And I'm handy, I replaced a bunch of lights were out, and the dealers were just miserable. And so it was like, oh, this person's fixing stuff, holy smokes. So it turned it around pretty quickly. After that first year, we were in the money, and it just built and built and built from there. And doing Itchies is what really got me my knowledge base going, because we would go to auctions and garage sales and sell our own stuff and buy out households. And it got to a point where at Itchies, I also went to, when I owned Itchies, I went to graduate school, got my MBA, learning more about finance. I just want to learn more about the business world, and finished my MBA in 2 years, going to school at night. And that was an adventure. Itchies led us to, we also opened a second store called The Attic, and we did that one, more higher end furniture and stuff. And that one did okay, but it just wasn't cutting the snuff after about 3 years, and we eventually just closed it because it was making money, just not enough. So, but you got to try stuff, entrepreneur, you got to try stuff. And also, as a part of Itchies, there was a sports card shop in Itchies called The Dugout, and the lady that owned that wanted out. She was just done with it, tired of it. So I bought that from her, and I actually enjoyed that a lot. The bad thing about sports cards is that's a lot of cost of goods of very low margin. So you got to do high volume, which it did. It did okay volume, but in hindsight, where the money was, where I should have been focusing, but I just didn't know enough about it, was the Magic cards. I also sold Magic cards there. And man, if I would have just stockpiled a few cases of stuff from back in that day, now those are worth like 20 times the money of what they were back then. But, que sera, hindsight, it is what it is. But eventually, I got to know another guy. His name is Jim. And Jim really wanted to own his own sports card shop. So eventually I talked to him and worked out a deal. He bought the sports card shop from me, and I actually made money from that deal. So that was a good deal. Throughout that time as well, I opened a second Itchies location in Kansas City, Missouri. And that was challenging because it was just far enough away from Columbia. I had to stay there a lot. It was like 2 hours away. I had to stay a lot of overnights and stuff. And when I was there, just like in Columbia, when I was there overseeing things and doing things hands-on, it was doing very well. But the minute I tried to, and not to disparage anyone if they see this that worked there, because I had a manager, her name was Pam, she was fantastic, super lady, but they just couldn't do what I did. And that's not a conceited thing, that's not a narcissistic thing, that's just the truth. When I was there, the numbers were good, and when I left, when I wasn't there to be personally hands-on, doing things my way, it just didn't cut the snuff. But it was open for, it was still open actually when I sold the business. When I sold Itchy's Flea Market to my brother-in-law when we moved out here, the Kansas City store was still open and making just a little bit of money, but not enough to make it worth the trouble. So eventually my brother-in-law closed that location, and now he just has the one in Columbia still, which is still a fantastic business, and I still kind of regret selling it. But all that experience, and I did that for 10 years, that experience of owning the flea markets, the high-end furniture shop, the sports card shop, 10 years, a decade of education. That's like a PhD in flea market and thrifting and garage selling. You learn so much. I learned so much stuff I just couldn't possibly remember it all. So I'm not a jack of all, I'm not a master of anything, I'm a jack of all trades. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. So I know a little bit about everything. I really admire people that really specifically know a lot about one thing. Like NASCAR man is fantastic with Hot Wheels. John, Cincinnati Picker, knows a ton about sporting goods. And Justin, RVA Flips, knows a ton about video games. I know a little bit about all that stuff, but not in depth about anything. So and after 10 years of doing that, the business was still highly successful. I was just kind of tired of the day-to-day grind, dealing with dealers, dealing with employees, dealer drama. It's just, I was done with it. So when my wife had the opportunity to come out here with a good job, we discussed it, and we were like, well, we could still let Itchies run, and I could just fly back there once a month, make sure everything. But I knew from experience that didn't really work that well, just from the Kansas City store and the Kansas City location. But my brother-in-law, and actually my brother-in-law's wife, had dropped some hints. What are you going to do with itchies? What are you know? And I was like, well, I may need your help to run this thing. And he eventually said, why don't you just sell it to us? And worked out a deal. And yeah, now he owns it. Good deal for him. Good deal for us. And it's actually, if you go by the principles of finance and business world, he actually got a really good deal. But there's no one going to pay what they should for a flea market. In the business world, the revenue, the gross and net revenue that store was bringing in, he should have probably paid triple if it was like just a normal regular business. But I knew that a flea market wouldn't, bring what it should. But it was still a good deal for him, good deal for us, and we still made money on it. And we made money for that, every year, but that first year, that decade of owning that, and that was our education. So when we got here, what do I do? That was my biggest quandary, because I've been through this before. When I went to Missouri, I was like, I'm educated, I'm experienced, I'll find a job. Well, it's easier said than done. So, sorry, I was looking at the timer there. I'm going to wrap this up here in a couple minutes. But when I got here, I was like, my wife and I talked about it, and we're like, well, I can apply for some jobs, and I did, but do I really want to sit in a cubicle? People don't want to pay you anything. I'm used to making this amount of money, but they want to pay half that, and, what other stuff. And one day we were out. We still hadn't learned the area that well, and we stumbled upon a thrift store. We're like, oh, let's pop in the thrift store, and we just got to look around. I'm like, there's some pretty good stuff here, different stuff than Missouri. And I picked up a couple things. I'm like, hey, I should try to sell this on eBay. And that's where it started. And after a month or two, I was still, passively buying stuff. And my wife and I kind of at the same time goes, I think you make a run at this. I think you can do this full time. And yeah, that's been 3.5 years ago. And here I am still doing it every day. Have my routine every day. I'm not saying it's easy. My wife helps me out with the sourcing and some of the editing of the videos, and she's teaching me how to edit. Bless her, because that's tough to learn. But I do all the other stuff. I list, I photograph, which I'm getting better at. You get better at everything. You learn, get better. So yeah, that's my Bonafides. That is why I do what I do. What led me to where I am today. That's the whole story. From being a kid all the way up through college and owning flea markets and businesses and other businesses and sports cars and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, thanks for listening to me ramble. That's my story, and I hope you pass along to others. And I'm not saying I know everything. That's one thing I really wanted to make clear. And I used to say it all the time in my early videos. We all make mistakes. I still make mistakes to this day buying stuff. You see it in my sold videos. I show it all. There was that book in my last haul video. I'm like, I still made money on it, and I've lost money on stuff. Trust me, this isn't all roses and rainbows and lollipops. You definitely buy some turds every now and then. So that's where you really learn, though. So yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks to all of our old subscribers, new subscribers, everyone in between. Thanks to all the patrons. Hate to keep pounding on this, but those mystery boxes are awesome. Putting together an auction. We have mystery boxes at $50. $125 and $250 level for the different level of patrons. So if you guys check that out, the link is in the description right here. Click it. That's it. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you with the sold video pretty soon. Thanks.